老铁们，大家好，我的名字是真家燕。For millions of years, humans have existed. But did you know for the last 10,000 years, our brain size has dropped by 10%? That's true. Our brains have dropped in size by 10%. And the scientists don't really know why. But I'm going to tell you why. It's because of nutrition. And to get into more detail on this, first we need to understand what the government tells us. They tell us we need high carb, low fat diet. However, chronic disease, obesity have risen in correlation with a reduction in dietary intake of fat. They want us to eat starchy foods. They want us to eat rice, bread, pasta. So these guidelines have made us consume less pasture-raised meat, eggs, and butter, and instead have lots of foods high in sugar and refined flour. Did you know that about 90% of all items in supermarket shelves have added sugar? Why is that? Because the medical establishment told us fat was bad. So the food processors were forced to take the fat out of food and replace it with sugar. Fat is delicious. When you take fat out of food, it doesn't taste good. So they were forced to add sugar. That's one of the reasons why we have so much sugar in our diet, because of this awful dietary advice. The diet heart hypothesis, which holds that consuming saturated fat and cholesterol raises blood cholesterol rates, which increases heart disease risk, was based off studies in humans and animals made half a century ago. However, more recent studies, which are of higher quality, show that such a relationship doesn't exist. Have you heard doctors say that you should drink red wine every day? Do you know why they say that? It's because of the French paradox. See, the French cook everything with butter. They have a lot of fat. And the doctors and scientists couldn't understand why their heart disease was so low. It was low because of the animal fats. But the doctors and scientists couldn't accept it. Instead, they looked at other parts of their diets, and they chose red wine as being the reason for their health. Therefore, we receive the recommendation to drink red wine, which is completely unhealthy. And so many old people nowadays force themselves to drink alcohol because of these horrible dietary recommendations. Also worth noting, the French would drink their wine with animal fat because it would reduce the burden on the liver. But you won't hear that from the doctors. There have been some very prominent figures that have spoken against this hypothesis. However, their voices are rarely heard. One of these people is Dr. Sylvan Lee Weinberg, the former president of the American College of Cardiology. He said, "The low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet may have played an unintended role in the current epidemics of obesity, lipid abnormalities, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic syndromes. This diet can no longer be defended by appeal to the authority of prestigious medical organizations." Humans consuming animal fat is so important that it's the reason why our brains have increased 3 times in the last 2.5 million years. They say that eating meat is the reason why our brains grew so much, but it's really the consumption of animal fat which is why our brains grew so much. But why do I keep talking about animal fat? What's so special about it? It's because animal fat contains long-chain fatty acids that are essential for brain development. Plants, however, have shorter chain fatty acids. Our bodies can alter these molecules, but we're very inefficient at doing that. When we ate meat, we were able to consume pre-formed long-chain fatty acids. We didn't have to convert anything, and this is what resulted in our explosive brain growth. I mentioned before that our brain size dropped by 10% in the last 10,000 years. Well, the reason for that is because 10,000 years ago, the Ice Age ended. During the Ice Age, we were eating lots of big fat animals, and we could barely grow any plants. When the Ice Age ended, we could start farming, and the agricultural revolution began. Therefore, we replaced the fat, nutrient-dense animals with grain. So the reason why our brain shrunk by 10% is because we shifted into a high carb diet. This is the reason for the reduction in brain size, and this is what scientists should be studying. Animal products are naturally high in cholesterol and saturated fat. These things are very good for us. Every cell in our body is made of saturated fat. We need to consume it. Cholesterol is a repair mechanism in our body. When you have a cut on your finger, the first thing your body sends to it is cholesterol. It's not a bad thing. When somebody has a heart attack, they have extensive arterial damage. Therefore, you expect there to be cholesterol there to repair it. The cholesterol is the ambulance, but the doctors and scientists treat it like the enemy. They blame the ambulance for the issue. Cholesterol also is a great antioxidant. Unlike plant antioxidants, which we can't properly digest, we need to focus more on cholesterol as an antioxidant. As an antioxidant, cholesterol protects us from cancer. It forms the adrenal glands that help us deal with stress and regulate sexual function. In fact, so important is cholesterol that 25% of our brain is made of the stuff. In fact, if you want to prove this for yourself, go eat some brain. If it's high quality brain, eat it raw. It'll have the same texture as egg yolk because it's so high in cholesterol. Our brains are made of cholesterol. We need it. One of the major downsides of drugs that lower cholesterol is that they cause Alzheimer's and dementia. That's because these drugs starve our brains of cholesterol. We need cholesterol so that our brains never develop such debilitating diseases in the long run. The brain thrives on a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet, which unfortunately is really uncommon nowadays. The cause of heart disease and almost all other chronic diseases is inflammation. Inflammation is what we need to focus on and reduce. This is what's causing our health problems, not saturated fat, not cholesterol. And inflammation is greatly enhanced by a high-carb, low-fat diet. And I'll go into further detail about inflammation in another video. One thing that's very important to remember is that the medical establishment never corrects a mistake it made. They will never issue an official statement saying that they were wrong about the demonization of cholesterol and saturated fat. Instead, they'll just ignore it and pretend like they never made the recommendation. Now they're not as loud as they used to be about low-fat, high-carbohydrate diets. Now they mention good fats. Well, that's the end of my video for today. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next time.